Everybody is talking about privacy coins, and for good reason. Zcash is pretty much the only altcoin that was able to outperform this year. But what about Monero? Monero is a direct competitor. How is it valued versus Zcash? Is there potential opportunity here? Because if nobody talks about Monero, maybe that's the right time to buy. We want to buy when there is very little attention on something. We want to sell when everybody talks about it. Now, privacy coins in general struggle with living in a regulatory gray zone. Thus, because of the legal risk, exchanges tend to delist them. But then we see big whales accumulating XMR. So what do they know that most people don't? Hi, my name is Gerhard. I've been in the crypto space for the last 8 years. I hit my first million 3 years ago, and it is mainly through active altcoin trading. In the last 2 years, I started to publish my trades in real time, and since then we made 48% per annum. On average, it's 5% gains per trade, but of course not every single trade is profitable. What matters is the long term. I'm publishing all of the trades in real time once they've been closed here on this public website. Now, the positions that are currently open, that's available for the premium members. But this is the stats: 5.1% per trade over 185 trades, an average holding duration of 26 days. And that's then how that looks like over time. I'm sharing this because I don't think many people on YouTube are willing to be that transparent. Maybe because their performance doesn't look like that. Especially in the last 2 years, where most diversified portfolios got completely crushed. I'm going to share in this video how I'm actually able to outperform in a market like this. Now, this is XMR, so Monero, relative to ZEC, so that's Zcash. Monero tended to outperform Zcash up until August of last year. So over the last 11 or 12 months, XMR underperformed massively by more than 90%. But is this potentially an opportunity? Can this revert? And could Monero more than 10x from here relative to ZEC? Now, obviously, it's very hard to answer questions like this. We have to use approximations, right? For example, how much is the blockchain worth relative to its usage? And for usage, we could just look at the number of transactions. This is the number of Monero transactions over time. And it currently tends to hover at around 25,000 a day. Compare this with Zcash, and that's at around 5,000 per day. So Zcash has 5 times more transactions than Monero. So just based on that metric, Monero's market cap might be, say, 20% of Zcash's market cap. Of course, there are other metrics that matter as well. But just with this metric, Zcash should have 5 times the size. Monero should be 20% the size of Zcash. And so let's compare the market caps over time. This is now XMR, so Monero, relative to Zcash. And according to the transaction charts, this should be at 20. So over here, if you just look at the transactions per day, then Monero is overpriced versus Zcash. We saw this massive rally in Zcash in the last year. Yet, still relatively speaking, it's cheap relative to Monero. Isn't that surprising? Privacy coins are useful. And whenever they get used in a broader context, for example, for public donations, that's indirectly a source of marketing as well. By the way, if you use X, formerly known as Twitter, then feel free to also check out the account of this channel. I publish data regularly over here. Make sure though that you follow the right account. So that's at Bitcoin Strat. Make sure that you don't follow a fake account. That's the only real one. Now, historically, XMR had a very hard time crossing the $500 mark. That's this horizontal line over here. We got a quick breakout, but then very quickly reverted. We might also make the argument that now we see higher lows. So maybe this is a bull flag. The problem with charts like this is that US dollar valuations are very much impacted by the general crypto space. As in, when Bitcoin goes up, then most altcoins go up as well. When Bitcoin goes down, most altcoins go down. So really what we have to look at is relative valuations. How does XMR do compared to other cryptocurrencies? Now this is XMR relative to Bitcoin. Yes, long term it did not perform that well, but maybe now we've got our breakout. Unfortunately, that breakout is not visible on the XMR relative to the altcoin market cap chart. So this now compares XMR within the altcoin space. And this picture is not pretty at all. XMR could easily crash by 90% or more. But what might cause such a crash? It's probably not tokenomics, as in, yes, there is New supply hitting the blockchain year after year, but that supply growth is not that aggressive. It's only 0.84% per annum. That's the same that we now have for Bitcoin. In other words, we should expect, just based on tokenomics, that Monero generates very comparable returns to Bitcoin. Now, since the inflation for Monero is fixed relative to the overall supply, the inflation rate goes down over time. We don't have a halving event like with Bitcoin, but we do have a growing circulating supply while the issuance of XMR is fixed. And so the ratio of newly minted tokens to the base improves over time. The problem with crypto trading in general is that there's a strong correlation between attention on an asset and its price. When a lot of people talk about an asset, then they consider buying, that pushes up the price. Once the attention moves to the next asset, then the price tends to decline. And we see the same structure in Monero as well. Have a look at the bar chart in the background. That's the number of mentions in social media. So how often is Monero discussed in Twitter, discussed in YouTube and other platforms? And then in green, as a comparison to that, the Monero price development. A lot of attention means a high price. Now we can interpret this chart in two ways. Currently, the attention is very low. So when it comes back to Monero, the price should also rise. We could also interpret this as the attention is low, and if it does not come back, we probably also will not see a rally. And so that's more of a short-term view, not a long-term view in terms of relative valuations. Let's stick with the short term. So in the last 24 hours, we had 41 million worth of trading volume on the spot market. Compare that with the perpetual futures market. Here we had 27 million worth of trading volume. So Monero is one of the very few altcoins that actually has more trading on spot than on levered bets on the price. In other words, the amount of open interest on the asset, or the amount of leverage, does not matter as much. We can see leverage going down and at the same time the price appreciating. In extreme cases, right, when open interest spikes up from 100 million to 300 million, of course, that also has an impact on price. But outside of those extreme events, there can be a quite clear decoupling. And that's healthy. We want demand to be on the spot market because spot demand tends to be more long-term. It's not just the fleeting speculative capital that moves from asset to asset. I think it's extremely important to look at relative valuations for two reasons. First of all, it tells us if an asset outperforms or underperforms, and investing is all about opportunity costs, right? Should we go into asset A or asset B? But it's also important in order to determine potential turnaround points. And again, I don't like that XMR is currently that high relative to the rest of the altcoin market, and that the overall trend is rather bearish. This bullish scenario of XMR doing a 10x versus ZEC is very unlikely, given that the on-chain activity does not support such a valuation. It's rather the opposite. And so I make most of my money doing relative valuation trades, betting on falling altcoins. So here we short NEAR versus Bitcoin, or here I shorted Trump versus Bitcoin, or here Luna Classic. That's what I usually do. Most altcoins tend to underperform Bitcoin most of the time. And that's why this chart looks the way it does. That's why we are with the open positions at an all-time high. That's why we made 48% annualized while everybody else got wrecked. We want to bet on the general market structure. And instead of trying to find the one or two outliers that still make money in a market like this, we can just flip this, right? We can just bet on everything that's red on this chart to turn green and everything that's green to turn red. So I think it's wrong to try to find the needle in the haystack. I think it's better to just bet on the general odds. And the odds are that most altcoins tend to underperform Bitcoin most of the time because of token inflation, because of insider selling, because of selling by market makers. There are many reasons. Bitcoin tends to do better long term, and that shouldn't be a surprise. Most people simply don't act on this, and that's why they tend to lose. Now, I can't share the positions that are currently open. However, in the pinned comment down below, there's a link to this website. One of the trades that I currently have open and that many premium members have open, you can get that for free. You can either connect your Telegram by clicking this button over here or scanning this code, or you can enter your email address. And then you will get that position. You can simply copy trade that. On top of that, you will also get a premium tutorial video that explains how to do those relative valuation trades, how to make money with this long term and manage risk accordingly, that in the end, the chart looks like this and not super volatile. So again, the link is down below. It's completely free. There's no payment needed, no credit card needed. Just plug in your Telegram or your email and you'll get this sent to your inbox. If it's your first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish videos regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. See you next time. Cheers.